exciting.
1983 most certainly was the year of the new excitement for the state of Michigan. Of the 12 United States Football League teams, the Panthers flew highest of all. And for Panther fans everywhere, the excitement is back again.
Well, we can finally turn away from all this NFL action that's dominated this podcast and turn to the Michigan Panther cast portion of this Limp Ditka's podcast. I am Ryan. I am a lifelong Michigan Panthers fan since a 10-year-old, rooting on the 1983 inaugural USFL champion Michigan Panthers, continuing to this day with the resurrection of my favorite franchise, football franchise. You, Pete, over there was never interested in the USFL, but I'm dragging him into this process as I will be talking about the Michigan Panthers every week in some form or fashion. Pete, in previous episodes, has chosen to go with the Pittsburgh Maulers as his team of choice, which I think is perfect. As I have declared, the Maulers will be our arch nemesis, our arch rival, as we were the two most popular teams on social media. So I think it was a natural rivalry. It's also the shortest distance between two franchise. The Michigan and Pittsburgh is shorter than any other franchise. So I thought that made sense. You independently came to that decision on your own, and I appreciate that. But the biggest news that I've been waiting for, and definitely the biggest news for the Panthers, maybe even the biggest news for the USFL.
I think it's the biggest news for the USFL so far,
since it has relaunched, is we finally have a fucking coach, and they knocked it out of the ballpark with Jeff Fisher. Not going 7-9 bullshit. Jeff Fisher. I couldn't be happier with the choice. It was finally
unbelievable.
Last Thursday. It came after weeks of delays. It was very strange how things played out, but they definitely saved the best for last. Finally, Jeff Fisher being announced. He's, probably the highest Q rating of any of the quarterbacks, the most any of the coaches announced, the most well-known across all of football. We have a collection of former college football coaches, college or pro, former coordinators, got some college, I think a Canadian Football League coach, but Jeff Fisher is by far the biggest, most well-known name out there. And they happen to place him with my Michigan Panthers. So Fisher is the 11th, has the 11th most wins in NFL coaching history, which is kind of hard to believe, mainly because he stuck around for 22 years between the Tennessee Titans and the St. Louis Rams. He has a final record of 178 wins, 171 losses, and 1 tie. So the joke doesn't quite apply where the famous meme is, I'm not going 7-9. I'm not going 8-8. Not even going 9-7. We're not putting up with that bullshit. That's one of his famous quotes from Hard Knocks that got out with his time with the St. Louis Rams. So, I'm, like I said, I think it's super cool. I think you could tell in his later years with the Rams that the NFL game had passed him by. That's where those records were dipping to places where he didn't want them to go. He is a Super Bowl. He didn't win the Super Bowl, but he got to a Super Bowl with the Titans in 1999. Came a yard and a half away from, I think, tying that game and putting it into overtime. But so he is a well-accomplished coach. The main thing is and I've played off this. You might have seen the graphic rotating in the background as it pops up timely right now. He is the man, the myth, the mustache, and the mullet. And now the face of the Michigan Panthers franchise. And I couldn't be happier about it.
I'm just shocked. And here's why I'm shocked. I know you said, maybe the NFL game had passed him by, but I guarantee if he said he was interested in coming back to the NFL with all these vacancies, like, he could be coaching the NFL if he really wanted to coach in the NFL.
The NFL is famous for retreads, so yes, I could totally see that.
But he's not. he wants, and this is interesting, like, the NFL, they're the spotlight, but he is choosing to get back into coaching by going to the USFL. And I think that should be noted. It should really be noted that he's just like, you know what? I'm done. I'm just done with the NFL.
Well, and he even in interviews lately says, he still has his falls open. Not that he'd be going to be coaching in the NFL necessarily, but obviously, but this feels kind of like a retirement job almost, where the USFL is only a couple months in the spring. He can do what he wants in the off season, in the long off seasons.
Right.
I think it kind of feels that way. I did mention that the NFL game passed him by, and I think that's pretty obvious by the end of his tenure in Los Angeles. Eventually, the LA Rams is where it finally ended. But that doesn't mean that the game of football has passed him by. And that's where I think, an experienced coach, defensive coach, with that kind of resume could be a dominant presence in a league like the USFL that is building itself up from scratch. So I think it uniquely positions the Panthers in a stronger place than any other franchise in the USFL right now. So I couldn't be happier. The Q rating part of it has played out already in that the Michigan Panthers have taken over in social media followers over your Pittsburgh Maulers. We're now approaching, I think, 17,000 followers on Twitter, which is almost doubled in the last week. It was 3,000 more than they had the previous day after the announcement. So you've seen that. So we have taken over the lead from my hated Maulers over there. It's also helped the Michigan Panther cast. Our Twitter followers are now, we've crested the 483 mark, and I keep pointing out 83 followers, as I want to get to 1,983 to commemorate our inaugural championship. So we're 1,500 away from that as of this morning.
Well, there you go.
We may have picked up a few more this morning. You never know.
You never know.
So yeah, you've seen the graphic in the background. I've got all sorts of new merchandise posted, t-shirts, sweatshirts, mugs, pint glasses with the myth, the man, the myth, the mullet, the mustache, Jeff Fisher right there.
For those of you viewing at home.
So go to limpditkas.com for all that. But
Limpditkas.
In other USFL news, it was announced last week that the inaugural game on April 16th between the Stallions and Generals will be simulcast on both Fox and NBC. 2 of the 4 over-the-airwaves major networks are going to be showing the USFL, which is kind of amazing. And that has not been done in 55 years, as Super Bowl I was the final game to be simulcast on 2 networks. So I think that's interesting. I mean, that helps, just again, the credibility, the exposure. It shows that NBC is equally committed to a league that is owned by its rival Fox. I think that just shows some major strength, and it shows that they do not suffer from similar weaknesses that previous spring league suffered from, which was trying to get themselves exposure and get themselves on television. I forget which league it was, but they had to pay to be on the air. They were almost like an infomercial, where we have the ownership from Fox and the 100% buy-in from NBC with this product on the field. So I think that's really going to help with the exposure. Another part of that exposure came this weekend during I believe it was during the NFC Championship game. Yeah, it must have been during the NFC Championship game, where a 30-second USFL spot came on and was broadcast to the 50 million people watching that game, which is just an astounding number. I believe you even saw that commercial and noted it.
I did. I saw the USFL commercial and went like, whoa, this shit is for real.
Nice. It was a funny commercial too. Like, the guy was at a restaurant and he couldn't think about anything but football, playing off the fact that we need more football. And that's where the idea of spring football fits perfectly. So A little bit of other news. Some tidbits leaked about the forthcoming USFL draft, or also known as the player selection meeting. Awkwardly, sounds like there's about 3,000 players in the pool already for that selection meeting, and it's been stated that 5 to 6 players on each of those rosters will be recognizable names. They have enough players that you will recognize to populate throughout the league, which is another important thing that this new venture will need. Is it's going to have some recognizable names beyond Jeff Fisher. The players are going to have to be recognizable.
Recognize.
So I'm encouraged by that idea that you're going to at least know a few of the players. They're not going to be household names necessarily, like we saw with the first USFL with Herschel Walker and Doug Flutie and Jim Kelly and all those, even some future Hall of Famers. But
maybe Tom Brady.
I made that joke. Maybe on social
that's why
media.
he retired.
Yeah, he needs to get out so he can have his spring cleared, so that Jeff Fisher can pick him up and make him back to his Michigan roots and take us to another championship. He needs a 9th championship. I think that makes perfect sense. So
really drive home the GOAT.
Well, they also announced your coach in previous weeks that we have not talked about, Kirby Wilson.
Finally getting to some real news here about the USFL.
Mind you, this is the Michigan Panther cast. I am going to give you some space for your Pittsburgh Maulers.
Well, bless your heart, Ryan. Bless your heart, Smitty. So the Pittsburgh Maulers, Kirby Wilson, lifetime NFL coach, 23 years, most recently running back coach of the Raiders. And compared to Jeff Fisher, I'll admit it, I was a little underwhelmed. But then in true Maulers way, in a team that is just going to beat its opponents down and leave them for dead on the field, Wilson, in a social media snippet of an interview, had this to say: "There's no greater feeling as a coach and a player knowing that you just beat the hell out of someone for 4 quarters. And that is what the Maulers are going to do every fucking week, folks." And that's why I picked the Pittsburgh Maulers, not just because of a great name.
It's a good name.
That means total destruction, basically, but because of that attitude. They're bringing the foot in football.
Wow. Okay. Well, I appreciate your participation in this, at least. And it's going to be fun. I think you're going to get excited once you see the rosters come through. That'll be in late February. So in about 3 weeks, I think it's February 22nd and 23rd is that draft or player selection meeting. So we'll have some more news on that front after that. The one thing I forgot to mention with the inaugural game on April 16th, they are selling tickets already in Birmingham, Alabama. General admission tickets are only $10, which I thought was a really interesting thing. And basically anyone under 15, children under 15 are free, which is brilliant. I think getting kids involved in something and letting families go to that is the way to build a following. And
yeah, that is a great idea.
Just $10 tickets. They're not trying to profit off of selling tickets. Essentially, this is a television product. And that makes perfect sense, being owned by a television network. It also dovetails nicely with their one location plan, and for this first year at least, playing all games in Birmingham, Alabama. You're not going to get Michigan Panther fans necessarily to fly down to Birmingham for games. I'm going to be fired up for it, but I get to see it on my television every week on major network television. It's not going to be hard to find. So they're doing this right. I speculated earlier if they might let fans in for free just to make the stadium look full when they play these games. If you only have 5,000 people at these games, it might hurt the television product. And having full stands, which I think they have a potential to do if they're essentially giving these tickets away, or for selling them for nominal amounts. I think that's what
there you go. There you go.
I think that's a good sign. It's a sign of goodwill. You've seen a lot of positive press in Birmingham itself. I think that community is excited about having this league there and having them headquartered and centralized there. for this first season at least. So I think you certainly will see a good following in this first game, a good showing, hopefully, and hopefully that can continue throughout the season. We see decent crowds throughout, and maybe if we get fired up enough, maybe I will jump on a plane to get down there. I know I'm not sure Southwest necessarily flies to Birmingham, but I have flown to Birmingham, Alabama once in my life before, so it can happen. You never know. Maybe we'll have a Michigan Panther cast outing with a sidecar Pittsburgh Maulers. So
Word Hole Media.